Viewers. Good evening, viewers. I want to welcome you back to this Monday evening's edition of the platform. And I think all this month, February, we've been talking about love and dating and relationships, and we have much more to cover this month. But tonight, we're taking the time out to talk about something that's really serious, and we entitled this series tonight, When Love Hurts. And so in the midst of all the celebration and the love and infatuation and the emotions are going high and the romance is high, we want to take this time to really talk about when love hurts and when relationships can turn unhealthy. And so I have some very special guests for you tonight, a special treat for you. I have Miss Martha Kent. She is a licensed professional counselor. You can wave to the viewers, Miss Kent. She is nationally certified counselor who provides a holistic therapeutic approach to managing life transitions. She is a graduate of Liberty University, where she earned a BS in psychology with a focus on Christian counseling and an MA in professional counseling. She enjoys helping women reach their full potential by helping them break free of patterns that keep them stuck. So, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome our counselor, Ms. Martha Kent. We also have Mrs. Andrea Reed, a wonderful delight, a woman, an occupational therapist, and a survivor and a thriver of an unhealthy relationship. And I welcome her to the platform, and she graced this stage with her story. And I thank you. I think you all will be blessed tonight as we dive into this subject. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive right in. So either one of you can answer, but I'm just going to throw it out there. So if you're out there in a relationship, you're in love, whether you're married or dating, how do you know you're in a toxic relationship? How do you know that?
You want me to go first?
However you want to.
Okay. I kind of feel like initially you don't know. To be honest, initially you do not know you're in a toxic relationship until you're in it. And then once you're in it, you find yourself to be kind of knee deep before you realize that, something's not right, something's off. You start to, it starts subtly and then it starts to gradually build. It starts off with the aggressive tones, the way they talk to you, the disrespect, and how they communicate with you. Then it gets to, they might push you, then it turns to a shove, then it graduates to a punch, a kick, a pull, and then that constant control and monitoring of your every move. And, initially when you're all in love and you're on cloud nine, you're thinking, oh, they just care so much about me. They're just so worried and they just want to know where I'm at and what I'm doing. And really, it's just them establishing that control and power of like constantly looking at your phone, where are you going and how long you're going to be? Or if you are in a location, they're constantly calling you or texting you during that time. And also you being able to say no to them is not acceptable. Something that, you should be able to, just as much as you can say yes in a relationship, you should also be able to say no. If you don't want to do something or if you don't agree to doing something, and they should be okay with that. Another thing that you realize later on down the road is that they keep a constant scorecard of everything that you do. It's kind of like a record. So anything that you share with them, whether personally, your weaknesses, anything that you've exposed yourself to, they kind of turn around and use it as leverage to maintain that control and power over you. So long story short, I just kind of feel like you really don't know you're in a toxic relationship until you're in it. And then it's so layered and so complex that by the time you're in it, you're so engraved in it. And it's just like a survival mode at that point. Just trying to figure out and navigate your way out of it safely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. And I think that the only thing I would add is the early warning signs are like gaslighting. And we miss that so much where, the person will, make us think that we're crazy, tell us that we're wrong about everything. Oh, no, you didn't remember it that way. Or or always just making you just constantly second guess like what you remember or how you remember things. Just that is one of the major signs is, intentionally not responding to your needs. Like something's wrong with you, you're so whiny, you're so needy. All of those are early signs of gaslighting that we miss, and that's how we end up knee deep, because we walk away thinking, well, I maybe I am needy, or maybe I am whiny, or maybe I shouldn't have asked for that,
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. So that's the beginning of abuse, is to start to tear down your confidence and your self construct. And so the more you start to doubt yourself, the more you just cave into that pattern of abuse.
Absolutely. And I thank you all for sharing that, because I think it's so important that we remember that when you're in relationships, like you said, they don't start out that way. They don't start off, blatantly obvious. It starts and feels like a loving and wonderful relationship. And so when throwing this out there, and viewers, you can certainly chime in and offer your feedback, your comments, and your questions. We'd love to hear from you. But how do you know the difference between normal relationship conflict and abuse? So when is the line crossed?
For me, I knew when there wasn't a mutual respect for my opinions, my feelings. There wasn't a validation for my hurt that I was experiencing in the relationship. And it was always, what you did to, cause the reaction or the response that you got, which most of the time it was, very abusive, whether it was physically, mentally, or emotionally, and not being able to have a voice in the relationship. And then just, feeling like it's not even worth it at the time. Like when you feel like you can't even advocate for yourself or speak up for yourself. That's when when you're able to, speak up for yourself and advocate for yourself, and you have that person receive it, listen, and validate your thoughts, and whether they agree with it or not, but just having that respect as a partner, and respecting that about you, that, that lets you know there's a difference between a healthy, conflict versus the abusive conflict, where if you bring something to their attention and you say, I didn't like how you did X, Y, and Z, like, I don't appreciate you talking to me like X, Y, and Z. And their response would be like, well, if you didn't do X, Y, and Z, then I wouldn't have said this, or I wouldn't have hit you, or I wouldn't have, done this. And it's always no accountability, no ownership of any part they play into it. And it's always, you are responsible for the response that you're getting.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. And I appreciate that, because it's so important that when you're in, I mean, hindsight is always 2020. And that's what I
Absolutely.
learned, that hindsight is 2020. And then, you get in these experiences, and you like, after you live through, you're like, that's right. Why didn't I see that? Why didn't I miss that? And so I want to give Miss Ken an opportunity to respond to the question as well.
I just wanted to piggyback on what she was saying, that yes, it always seems one-sided, like you're always to blame. But when we talk about relationships, there are healthy relationships, unhealthy relationship, and then there are just toxic relationships. And all relationships tend to have at least some of the first two things of healthy and unhealthy, patterns and communication styles. But healthy relationships don't live in the unhealthy zone and hardly ever reach the toxic zone, but they do have some characteristics of unhealthy, because we're human. But to add to what Andrea was saying, the other part of it is, in a disagreement, you're arguing about something that happened. You're not arguing about why you're a bad person or what's wrong with you. So when you're in an argument with someone and it always turns volatile, whereas you burn dinner, no, okay, I'm sorry I burned dinner, becomes you're stupid, you don't know how to cook. And it becomes like attacking and threatening and mistreating, and then controlling. So that's how you can tell the difference between something that is like a normal argument about dinner versus one that's, more abusive.
Absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned about the dinner situation. I had a situation where I was cooking, I believe it was cream of wheat, and I was stirring it, and it became a big argument because I was stirring it counterclockwise versus clockwise. And, I wasn't cooking it because, oh, you didn't want to fix it for me. That's why you're not doing it how you normally would do it. And you're going to make it wrong. It's not going to be the same, And it just, that's when you kind of know, when that abuser, it's like they use any opportunity to try to demean and put you down and kind of basically intend to hurt and control and try to humiliate you, and it was also in front of, one of his friends, and it just became this big, this big to do. And I'm just sitting here thinking I'm going crazy because I'm like, I know this is not all about some cream of wheat and me stirring counterclockwise versus clockwise. Like, this is insane, But it really did become a really big blow up. And that's one of those situations where you do, that's one of those real red flags. It's like, hey, this is a very toxic relationship that you're in, just piggybacking off of what you have just spoken about, just little things turn into big things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, were you going to say something? And I'm sorry.
No, I wasn't.
Okay. And I think, I can even think on, out of full disclosure for myself, just opportunities of my late husband, we had a what I would say an abusive relationship. It didn't go as far as physical, but it definitely was a lot of emotional and verbal abuse, and it was escalating. And like we were saying earlier in the broadcast, I didn't see it. I didn't think it was what I would say abusive behavior. And then I think was so tricky about it is that I knew about abuse. I learned about it in the textbooks. I learned about it in the classes. I'm a nurse by profession, and we screen patients for domestic violence and abuse, and so I knew all of it. Intellectually and cognitively, but when you're in the relationship, when you're living it and experiencing it, I didn't make that connection. And it was many years later, and being in it full time and starting to notice and question and like, that's not making sense. Things started to click. Can you explain, like, why does that happen? How is it that we disconnect? We know the knowledge, or maybe we don't know, but in my case, I knew the knowledge, but I didn't make that connection to my personal experience.
So I recently had a similar experience where, I was seeing someone and they started gaslighting me. Gaslighting is when the other person tries to make you think that you're crazy or you don't understand. Your perception of reality is wrong. So it would start with things like, okay, we're going to meet at the restaurant on this street, and then I go to that street and they're like, no, I said meet at the one across the street. And so you get to thinking and you're like, well, maybe I did mishear, or maybe I misunderstood. And you start to just naturally question, like, okay, well, maybe I wasn't paying attention, maybe my background was noisy, and then so on and so forth. And you just end up like in this hole where you're looking up and you're trying to figure out, like, how did I get down here, where I'm afraid to say what I think or what I feel.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mrs. Reed, did you have anything you wanted to say? It looked like you had something right on the tip of your lip.
No, I mean, I agree with everything she's saying. It's a very subtle is very subtle, how it all, you know, happens and how it all plays out. And you don't see those, you know, those gaslighting signs early on, you know, could be misconstrued for other things, or we're in denial, or a lot of times we want to see what we want to see, you know, and we get caught up, you know, in that kind of infatuation period. And it's just a very subtle thing, a progressive thing that you're not even realizing as time progresses, how you've been, you know, how they've been gaining that control and manipulation and power over you over the course of a few months, or, you know, a few weeks. And then, you know, like, you know, Ms. Martha was saying, it was just, you know, you really start to doubt yourself and really start to think like, well, maybe, you know, maybe I didn't see the sky was, you know, was purple. You know, I thought it was blue, but he did say it was a little hint of purple. So maybe, you know, and you really start to think you're somewhat crazy a little bit. And then you just, that doubt, that self-doubt starts to kick in, and not to mention all the other complexities of whatever you're dealing with personally, you know, self-esteem, self-worth, you know, confidence, you know, your own weaknesses and things that you're dealing with from whatever, you know, experiences you've had over the course of your life, coupled with whatever they're bringing to the table too.
That's right. And I, you know, want to make sure that the audience is aware that, please, you know, this, we want to hear from you. If you're just joining us, if you were having connectivity issues and you're just joining us, again, this is the platform. We aired at 7:30. We're talking about When Love Hurts. We have Ms. Kent on, and she's a licensed professional counselor. And then we have Mrs. Andrea Reed on as our guest, as a survivor and a thriver of unhealthy relationships. And so if you're just tuning in, you're just joining us, this is where we are. We want to hear from you. And so again, I certainly couldn't understand, you know, for me personally, as living through some of this as well, how you can really feel like out of your desire to please, I think everyone wants to, you know, please their spouse, please their significant other. You want them to be happy, and they're telling you these things. Well, you know, you did a good job, except if you would have done it this way. Or I remember a Christmas where I bought my late husband a gift, and he was like, "Hey, you know, it would have been nice if you would have did this." And it felt so, you know, and it's subtle. It's not like he, you know, attacked me physically. It wasn't like this crazy, you know, all physical altercation. It was a lot of moments like that. Those ones that kind of just take a stab at you emotionally and mentally and get you second guessing and like, well, man, maybe I was being selfish, or maybe I didn't think about it that way. And it happened all the time. And the way I described it, when we would have numerous conversations, I would say, you know what, I feel like I'm running this race and you keep changing the finish line on me. And I feel like I'm trying to, like, I want, you know, you tell me these things and I'm like, okay, let me take this and try to love you, try to learn from it. And then I'm doing this and I'm on this treadmill and I'm going. And it was like, you know, that was okay. You made me happy, except when you did this. And it just kept going and going. And so any one of you want to, you know, speak to that?
Yes, it was same situation when I was in this toxic relationship. It was with my college friend, and it was the same thing. Like, I felt like I was running this race, and each time he was pushing the marker back, and every time I adjusted or accommodated the behavior, his behavior got worse. You know, so each time he pushed the marker back, you know, it was the abuse got worse, the language got worse, the physical abuse got worse, the demands got worse, you know, and it was just kind of like, because in your mind you're thinking, well, if I just do this, then this will stop. Or if I just do this, then he will be happy. Or if I just do this, you know, he said, if I just do this, we will go back to that moment in time that I'm holding on to when everything was great and gravy. Because that's like, I feel like throughout the relationship, it's like, that's that moment that you are constantly fighting to go back to, you know, because when you got into a relationship, it was almost like a bait and switch kind of situation. They are like friend, they are the best thing since sliced bread in the beginning of the relationship to kind of get you in. They feel like you think they're all compassionate, they're considerate, they're loving, they're caring, they're all of these things. And then somewhere along the line, that's when that switch happens. And it's almost like you're in that constant race, and you're trying to get back to that person that you know existed, but only to find out that it was just all part of a game to just gain control, and power. So definitely is one of those situations where I've definitely felt like in that situation. Of course, looking back and, when I've, done the work and kind of look back over, how it all played out and, analyze it and just say, it was definitely one of those situations. The more you gave into their demands and expectations, it's like the worse the abuse became. And that, from my experience.
And Ms. Ken, I'm going to give you a chance to comment, and then we'll go to our viewers.
She pretty much summed it up exactly what I was saying. It's always like a constant race. Like the mark is just always being moved from one place to the next. And I mean, I don't have anything to add to what she said. she said she summarized it very, very well.
That's right. That's right. And so I wanted to go to our viewers. Our viewers asked the question: if you're a family member and you suspect your loved one is in an abusive or toxic relationship, what can you do or say to be supportive and help your loved one see the light? Great convo, ladies. Any of our panelists want to respond to that?
Say that last part. Say the question one more time.
If you're a family member and you suspect your loved one is in an abusive or toxic relationship, what can you do or say to be supportive to help your loved one see the light?
Ooh, well, that's that's a tough one. I mean, I don't know who the viewers on here know that Natalie is my sister. And and I had, have been in that toxic relationship, and I had, I don't know. You mind me sharing, Natalie? You mind me sharing?
No, we don't let you be yourself.
Okay. But it was when I had met, her late husband, and there were things that I had experienced that I know that she had not experienced. And I was able to immediately pick up on a lot of the things that I had experienced in my own personal relationship. And I tried to, run interference, I tried to do a lot of things to try to run interference to try to get her to see the things that I was seeing. But then what I realized, and to the viewer who asked the question, what I realized at the time, the more you push, the more you're going to push that loved one into the arms of the abuser. But I will feel like, for me, the best advice looking back, if I was to give myself this advice looking back, would just to kind of do kind of what we call motivational interviewing in occupational therapy. Is kind of getting the person to dissect and come up with their own solutions without them feeling like you're the one who's giving it to them. So I think looking back, I think I would have took a different approach to have more of a conversation to kind of just bring up certain things or certain behaviors to my sister to say, hey, you notice this, or do you realize this, or how does that make you feel, when he does X, Y, and Z? And that would have kind of planted the seed and made would have start to kind of get her to think, have that extra sounding board, that extra voice that was other than his. Because a lot of times what I've noticed too, with my abuser at times, he wanted to be the only voice in my head. So I wouldn't have much of an outside influence to really be privy to, the mind games and the control that he was trying to maintain over me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. Ms. Kent?
Yes, I would say the number one thing you'd want to do is get educated. Know the different resources out there for yourself, know what abuse looks like, and then have those resources available for your family member or your loved one. You never want to encourage that person to, just leave or walk away, because that is the most dangerous time in an abusive relationship, is when that person is losing control. So you always want to just be supportive of that person, and make sure that you don't use any blaming words or stigmatizing words like this is your fault, or just leave him. Don't badmouth the abuser, but just get educated and know what those resources are available.
Mhm. And so I think um, I appreciate you sharing that, because it's so important to know and have that guidance. And that's why, because of the subject matter this evening is so sensitive, and it's sensitive and it's important and it's crucial. And for any viewers out there who are currently in a toxic relationship, have survived a toxic relationship, or know someone who's in one, it's so important that you know what to do to navigate this rough waters safely, and from a position of support. And so, I can't thank my, Miss Kent coming bringing her expertise to help us. But I do think what you lifted up is important. And so for the viewers out there, we're throwing these words around: abuse. What exactly is abuse, and are there different types of abuse?
So, absolutely. So, abuse is, there are many different types of abuse. There's financial abuse, there is physical abuse, there is emotional abuse, there's spiritual abuse. Um, those are the only ones I can think of right now. Um,
Sexual abuse.
how did I forget that one? How did I forget that? That's a big one. Help
Mhm.
me out here. Sexual.
Yeah.
Uh, so abuse is, when the person tries to take control of the situation, try to have power and control over the other person. And, women are abusive. Just as much as men are abusive, which
Mhm.
is not something that we like to hear. Um, but but being in an abusive relationship is, it looks like you have no power, like nothing you say or do is right, and that other person holds all the cards. So it's really an unbalanced relationship where there are no boundaries. And if you try to implement boundaries, and those boundaries are, just completely disregarded, and for lack of another word, I would say it's just completely disrespected.
Mhm.
Yes.
And thanks for sharing that. And make sure, I want to make sure I'm including in our viewers. Thank you for those who are chatting in comments and questions. We want to hear from you. For those of us who are joining us in the top of the hour, again, this is the platform we're talking about when love hurts. And so we have our guest panelists on talking about abuse in all of its forms, and really unpacking this sensitive topic that affects not only women but men as well, and also children. And so that's something that we can kind of dive into later on. And so, viewers, we do want to hear from you. But what effect, I'm going to throw this out to the panelists, what effect does abuse have on your body, on your mind, and your soul? I know
Ooh,
it's a big question.
yes.
That's a very big
That
question.
one, abuse, in any form, is traumatic, and it's a violation of your mind, body, and soul. And it's like your body's in a crime scene almost. It doesn't feel safe, um, and the trauma. You just try to spend as much time outside of your body as you can, because you're trying to escape constantly having to relive those moments. And then you're mentally tormented by the shame. You are ashamed that you were in the situation. You are ashamed that it occurred. You are ashamed that, how you reacted or how you didn't react when you were in that situation. And then, at the same time, you just, you start to become numb. I know at times I felt like just kind of like a soulless body walking around just in survival mode, just kind of like, I just got to survive, and you definitely feel outside of yourself. You lose yourself. And then, and it's a battle of, trying to remember who you were before you got with them, and try not to become the person that they're trying to make you out to be, or that they say that you were throughout the relationship. And then also what society deems you to be. You're also fighting the stigma of society of blaming the victim also.
Well said. Ms. Kent?
I think that was very well said. And I just wanted to add, like, with the dissociation that happens, your body goes into fight or flight where you can never like rest. And so um, I'll speak to the soul aspect of it. It like creates soul wounds where you're like abandoned and wounded, humiliated. There's like betrayal trauma in there. So it's your soul is never at rest, and it's just anguished. So that's the soul effect. But on your body, your body is just physically stressed because you're always in fight or flight. And I know, Natalie, you can speak to that, the impacts of stress on your body and how it can cause all these other ailments to come in, things that you weren't diagnosed with. Or that it could trigger different kinds of things, and then in your mind, it is hard to just regain confidence. Like your sister said, to just get back to a place where like who you were before you met that person, and be confident to know that that person was okay just as she was or he was.
And I appreciate you sharing that, Ms. Ken. And I wanted to, look to our viewers, and the viewers ask, well, how do you really refine yourself? How do you find yourself? How do you get you back after experiencing, or even, I wouldn't say just afterwards, sometimes you're even in it still.
Yeah.
How do you reconnect to yourself in those moments?
For me, it was the healing started once I was able to distance myself from him. I was able to clear my mind and, only hear my thoughts and really reconnect with my relationship with God. I felt like, my relationship with God had suffered, in that relationship. And just really, I had to dig deep, and I had to dive within myself, because although, I had to get to the point of understanding that no matter what I did or said or reacted, or what I said or done, I didn't deserve the response that I got. And once I realized that, and knowing that there's still a part that we all play in a relationship, and coming to acknowledgement of that, and just figuring out what role did I play in the relationship, and trying to figure out where was the breakdown for me, where was my, where did I go wrong? What made me stay? Or what were the things that, that I was dealing with prior to the relationship that was kind of brought to the surface, that I wasn't even aware of, that, was an issue or a problem prior to the relationship. And just really digging deep and finding my relationship with Christ again, and getting rooted and grounded in that. And the verse that always stuck out to me was, 1 Corinthians 13:4-8, about love and patient, and it's kind, it's not boastful, it doesn't hold record of wrong. And as I'm going through all these things that God is saying love is, I'm also realizing that that is not what I'm experiencing. And just having to really take time for myself to do the work, and not make excuses for myself, but also forgive myself and not of myself as well, and know that I'm human, and really had to go through like a detox of all of the things that he tried to make me believe about myself. And it just really was hard, brutal, grunt work. As Yana Van Zant would say, you got to do the work, and I did the work. And, I just thank God. I just give all, God all the glory and the praise for getting me through that very dark time in my life.
And I thank God that you went through, and so many others, men and women, are going through this and that there is healing that can take place. But in thinking about the question that was posed and our viewers throwing out, that stress or that constant fight or flight, does that lead to a lot of forgetfulness? And I would say yes. Any kind of stress on the body is a stress cognitively. So the way that you process information, and so that goes into, memory, being able to recall things, physically. That fight or flight response is driven by hormones. And these hormones change your heart rate, it changes your blood pressure, it changes where your body shunts blood away from or towards, because it's preparing your body to fight or flight. Because of that, cortisol levels are high, and if you're in a constant state of fight or flight, even when you're at rest and there's no apparent immediate danger, your body is always in place. You're having these high surges of hormones going on all the time. You have neurotransmitters going berserk. These things tear down and negatively affect your body. And so abuse hurts on all levels is what I'm getting. From the physical level, it hurts your soul. Spiritually, it wounds you and hurts you. And emotionally, it wounds you. And also want to lift up to one of our viewers noted that it can even cause PTSD. And so, Ms. Kent, in your role as a professional counselor, what are your thoughts on that? PTSD, abuse, is this real? Is that a reality?
Oh, it's definitely a reality. Yes. I see people often that have PTSD, just flashbacks, replaying the abuse and the over and over and over, unable to sleep, and again, just being in a place of fight or flight, not able to calm down. So yeah, absolutely. You are very much so in a form of like a PTSD.
Yeah, and I
Absolutely.
think, mhm. And I think this kind of is a good segue. If you were texted in or chatted in, but it's a good segue into my next question. It's like when you're in these toxic relationships, when you're in these abusive relationships, do you try to stay and fix it or do you leave? And if you don't leave, or why would people not choose to leave? And I'm just throw that out to the panelists to respond.
While you're in it, you try to fix it. Just naturally, you're going to try to fix the relationship, even though for some reason it's toxic and it's not healthy, but it's kind of what you've been conditioned to. It's what you've gotten comfortable and accustomed to. So naturally, you try to fix it. But of course, hindsight is 2020, and if I was in that situation today, I would definitely try to leave. But kind of leading into why people stay in abusive relationships. I kind of hate the narrative that society puts out there of, making it seem like it's a simple decision to just say, oh, I'm just going to up and leave. The first sign of abuse, like, oh, I'm out of here. It's not that simple. And abusive relationships are extremely complex situations. And it takes a lot of courage to leave. Abuse is about power and control. So when me as a survivor, tries to leave or gives the threat of leaving, that very existence of my partner's power and control, that he established over me, and which caused me at the time to be fearful, to just fearful that he may retaliate. It hurt me, kill me. I mean, he's threatened me on many occasions to kill me, or hurt my family. So leaving is like Miss Martha was saying, it's the most dangerous period of a survivor's time when they're trying to leave. And I know that statistics say that on average, you try to leave 7 times before you actually leave for good. And it's unfortunate, that some survivors, some victims of abuse don't make it when they go back. Sometimes it costs them their lives, or, they are forever eternally damaged as a result. So that's what makes it really scary. It's just that fear and that unknown of being in that relationship, or why people stay a lot of times. It's just the fear of retaliation, or what will happen if I do get away. How are they going to retaliate against me or those that I love and care about?
Miss Kent, I see
Yeah.
you got some words on your lips.
Yeah, I was just shaking my head like in total agreement. And the other part is, like Andrea said, it's very complex, and it's a tipping weighted situation. And so if it's financial control, then like who wants to leave? And if they have children involved, you take your children to a shelter, so everybody's life is uprooted. And then there is like the I don't want to say reality, but the thought that the person has that the abuser is not a bad person. A person in a toxic
Mhm.
relationship may rationalize it for a long time. Maybe they just had a bad day, or maybe they had too much to drink last night, or maybe they were right. I should have had dinner ready. So it's that self-doubt of, okay, I'm going to just keep striving and striving and striving, and eventually I will get it right. So it's what we were talking about earlier with moving the goalpost. And so as the person that's in the situation, they don't think that the abuser is a bad person more often than not. They just think that they have comforts that they're getting from this person, and they're not really sure of how to give up those comforts in a lot of situations.
Totally agree.
Yes, and I think just what both of you are saying, and even our viewers chatting in, and certainly viewers keep those comments and questions going as we talk about when love hurts. So we want to hear from you here on the platform. But it just as you all were sharing your own story, sharing your professional experience, I can speak from my own personal experience as well. And it was quite, feeling that you do feel the intensity step up when you start to become more empowered, and you start to question and be like, you know what, no, that really doesn't make sense. And no, I'm not responsible for your happiness anymore. And then
Mhm.
they turn up the heat. They turn up the heat on you, and I'm gonna leave, I'm gonna do this, or you're not gonna make it without me.
Oh,
You
gosh.
can't do this without me. And so it's that emotional and mental prison that they try and cage, that you feel like that the abuser is trying to keep you in, so to keep you under control, and thinking too free, being too connected. I know earlier in the broadcast we mentioned about, uh, them trying to isolate you and not wanting to have other influences come into your life, other thoughts, other ways, and it's to really just reinforce that, I am the center of your all. I'm the one who is best for you. I'm the one, and you're the one who has a problem. You're the one who can't make me happy. You're the one who can't be loved. You're the one. And so you just, it's an entanglement. It's an
Yes.
entanglement
Yeah.
all levels. And I
Hmm.
want
Yes.
to just turn to our viewers. Our viewers chatted in, if my kids witness the abuse or maybe even abuse themselves, what do you recommend to help them cope and heal? And I'm going to throw that out to the panelists.
I'm gonna go with the professional on this one.
It's like, I defer to the professionals. Miss Kent?
I would say the most important thing with kids is messaging, making sure that they understand that it wasn't their fault, and then getting them connected with a good child therapist. And I will say someone that specializes with children who have been abused. That is so important, that it's someone that does play therapy, does sand tray, that could help them process the abuse. But the most important thing is messaging, and helping them to understand like what happened to you was wrong and it shouldn't have happened and it wasn't your fault, but making sure that they are after removed from the situation in a safe way, that they're in a loving environment.
Mhm. And I would say, unless Mrs. Reed, you had something you want to add, I certainly don't want to take over.
No. I mean, my experience was, I didn't have, any children with, my abuser at the time. So I just leave that to the professionals to speak on that. I can give my opinion, but I don't want to give the wrong advice.
And thank you for being wise, and giving the floor. But I can certainly say, as just experience and walking through it, because I had children, and it was very tumultuous, and it's constant. I just remember feeling so much guilt that my children are being hurt. And I'm sorry if I get a little choked up or teared up, but just feeling like I want to protect them, but I can't. I wanted to stop, but I can't control them. And just feeling that mommy guilt and feeling like that helplessness was just unbelievable. It was an unbelievable pain to feel and to be in that place. And just as Miss Kent raised up the importance of getting counseling, getting support, professional counseling, pastoral counseling, and I would say all of the above. I'm a Christian woman. Um, I'm not speaking against, spiritual, divine intervention, healing by any means. I believe God is a healer. But I do think God uses the body of, he uses people to help us walk through these things. And I can remember taking the children to counseling, and starting to feel empowered, because it's like, I learned that my children are more resilient than I thought they were. And that even if I couldn't control him, and I couldn't control all of the variables, I can give my children the tools to strengthen so they can bear and they can overcome, and we can make it together. And I had to start shifting the way that I think about that, because even just talking about it, I tap into that pain and it hurts and it's very raw. It's very raw. Any of the panelists want to speak to that?
I just, I've always been, in your corner and just admired your strength and always just, supported you. And through that process, just knowing, the anguish and the torment that one goes through being in a situation like that, and to compound it with children, because at that point, it's not just about your safety. At that point, it's about the safety and well-being of your children. And having children, now, and just, I can't imagine the amount of stress and anguish and fear and anxiety and just, just fear for your children and yourself. And I just admire your courage and your strength throughout that whole process. And my nieces are thriving, beautiful young girls. And, I might be a little biased, but they my babies.
Yes.
They're doing well.
And for all of our viewers out there, Miss Kim, by any means, chime in whenever you want to. But any of our viewers out there who are going through this and living this, and your children are involved, I encourage you. They're stronger than you think. You're stronger than you think. Get the support that you need. And even if you can't make your spouse go, your significant other go to counseling, get support, you go. You take your children and you can go. We thank God for technology. We're in a virtual world now, even more down than ever. You can do counseling online. And so I don't know, it's a plug in for Miss Kent. Like Miss Kent, you can do it online. You can do it online for getting that report.
Absolutely, you can do it online. There is no reason why you shouldn't do it. And depending on the severity, because things are always on a spectrum. So when we talk about domestic abuse and toxic relationships, I think that we have to keep in mind that life is lived on a continuum and on a spectrum. So it may look very different for some people than for others. For some people, it may be forms of emotional abuse or financial abuse, and then for others it may be all types of abuse: sexual, physical, emotional, financial, and so they may not have the resources or the means to reach out, or they may be in total isolation. And in those cases, I just want to just put in a plug and say, you're not alone, and people won't judge you if you go to reach out for help, because there is safety, and life doesn't have to look the way that it looks now.
Absolutely. And I agree with everything she said, because I gone to therapy. When I was on campus, they had campus therapists there for us to talk to. And I utilized that, and I've gotten therapy outside when I was after graduating, and definitely a huge advocate for seeking counsel, and your church, your pastor, just definitely just utilizing those resources that are out there, and realizing, just like Miss Martha said, that there's no judgment. They're definitely there to help you navigate through all of your emotions and all of your thoughts and ideas, and anything that you may have questions or concerns about. They're not going to make you feel like you're stupid, or why are you thinking this, or why are you feeling this, but actually help you navigate through it, so you can begin to heal and get back not only to yourself, but a better version of yourself.
Absolutely. And there's strength in community. There's strength in being in the light. When you're in the darkness and shame and secrecy, wickedness prevails, because there's no counteracting those negative thoughts or feeling. There's no one saying, hey, let's think about this a different way, or what, I think let me try to step in. Because when you're on the front lines of your own issue and you're getting beat up emotionally, mentally, and even physically or spiritually as you're going through this, you become weak. And and the word teaches us that when we're weak, Christ is strong, and He can be strong through others. You don't have to bear it and be all and everything. And I think of course I don't speak for the entire race, but I will say I feel like in my experience as a Black woman, coming from being raised and brought up in a Black church, there's so much, I don't need counseling. All I need is Jesus to get me through. Do I think that's true? Absolutely, yes. But I think it's not quite the whole truth. I think people are missing some of that. Can you all speak to that? Any of the
Yes.
panelists?
I mean, absolutely. It's a all-encompassing, ordeal. You get, God gives us wisdom to, seek out those things that, we get it through Him. We get our strength and understanding and guidance through Him, but He also places people here to help us along in that journey too. And I definitely feel like, is wise to, receive counsel from, the professionals, from people who have experienced it, have a community, a network that you can, trust and have an open conversation with about it. Because a lot of times coming out of that situation, I didn't feel like I could talk to somebody that was close to me, or that could really understand it. It was really hard to kind of open up, because a lot of that shame and guilt, and then just the stigma around abuse at the time. And somehow, some people would think, you still had some part in it, or it was partly your fault. So that, and it's a lonely feeling. So I definitely would say to reach out, reach out to those who are put in place, that God has put in place here to help you in those situations.
Kent?
Yes, I was going to just say that if you look at counsel in the Bible, the Bible is filled with wisdom and scripture about counsel and seeking counsel and seeking the advice of our wise counsel of our spiritual leaders, and that's God. God is a great counselor himself. And so it's something that is in the construct of how God created the world when it was formed, is that we need counsel because we can't really be left to our own devices to figure things out. So counseling is something that is necessary for all phases of life. And I would just add to that if it's when it comes to counseling, it's important to find the right fit. It's like a glove. So if you tried it before and it didn't work out, that just means that that person wasn't a good fit for you. It doesn't mean that that person is, good or bad or anything. It just means that it wasn't a good fit. But it's important to go to someone and figure out, like, what's in my heart, what is going on with me, and who can I really just get naked with and be honest about what I'm feeling and experiencing.
And that is so important, just being able to, because for so long in that relationship, you don't feel like you can be transparent or you can let your guard down because you're always in that fight or flight mode. So coming out of a relationship like that, it's, trust is a big thing and your guard is up. So basically, just like, Miss Martha was saying, just really being able to find someone that you can be naked with, because that's what it's really going to take for you to really truly expose yourself to heal.
And I always like to say that when we look at like shame and shame is what the world gives us. It's from the devil. Shame is telling us that something is wrong with us, and it contradicts everything that the Holy Spirit has put in us. Conviction is what comes from the inside, and that's what tells us, like, okay, we're doing what God says that we are supposed to do. We're walking this way, the right way. And so shame, when you come across shame, it's not a good habit to be led by shame, or to allow shame to have so much control in your life to where you're not going to reach out, because with shame is pride, and pride comes before fall.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And just to where this time is going by so fast, and I knew that it would. It's such a big topic, and it's so difficult to condense such a lofty topic in such a short time, an hour. But I wanted to, as kind of final thoughts, any advice that any of you have for anyone who survived domestic violence, domestic abuse, and they're in a place where they rebuild and they want to love again. They want to, take a chance at love again in relationships. What advice do you have for them?
Definitely just starting to making sure that you've done the work for yourself. So, because we all bring our own set of baggage and things we have to the relationship, but you don't want to hold someone else accountable for something that someone else had done. And you don't want to block your own blessings either, by putting an expectation or an assumption on somebody who may not have even displayed any of the things that you may have experienced. So I find it for my when I got back out there to date everything again, that just I like doing the work to heal, and realizing that I am responsible for my own happiness, and as are they, and I don't have the power or control to change anybody or to make anybody, what I want or what God has for me. And I just know that what God has for you and it will just gel the way it's supposed to gel. And if if you're dating and you're out there and something, someone doesn't work, or you kind of get that gut feeling that something's not right, be okay with just saying it's just not going to work, and move on, and don't try to make something work that shouldn't work. And just really just taking the time to do that personal healing, and before you move forward into another relationship would be my biggest advice.
Well said, Mrs. Reed. The only thing that I can add to that is that it's important to get educated. Educate yourself on what a healthy relationship looks like, and what are healthy boundaries. Learn your own boundaries and know, like, is this relationship balanced? Can I communicate? Do I feel free? I'm running late. Am I feeling anxiety? Listen to yourself and get in touch with what your deep gut emotions are saying, because they're always right. We have that intuition that God gave us for a reason. So my takeaway would be just get educated and know what healthy is and what healthy isn't.
Mm-hmm. And Miss Kent, do you have any resources, and I can type it up and put it out there for our viewers, for anyone that's going through something, whether it be a domestic violence hotline or a website where they can go to get educated or seek help?
Yes, I would recommend the hotline.org,
Okay.
or Love is Respect. Those are two websites that can connect you with domestic violence resources in your area. And one of the biggest parts of domestic violence resources is safety planning. So if someone is planning to leave, it's important that they connect with someone to get a safety plan, so that they can exit the situation safely. So those two resources are very helpful to help you navigate what is healthy, what is unhealthy, and then, like, this is toxic or abusive.
And thank you for sharing that, because there's quite a bit to wade through, and you're going to need the help for financial resources, for psychosocial support, support for the children, recovery. You might even need some situation. They might need temporary shelter. It just depends on, like Ms. Kent was saying, you're on a continuum, what your needs are. But certainly, we want our viewers to check out these websites. Look at it, share it with friends, look at them yourselves, learn, educate yourself, because it's so important. It's so important that you get the help that you need. And so we are over our time. I cannot thank these dynamic women enough. I cannot thank these dynamic women enough for coming on, for lending, for sharing your story, being courageous and bold, for Miss Kent sharing her expertise and her wisdom. And even, and Andrea, you certainly shared a lot of wisdom from experience of living through it yourself. And so I thank you both for being courageous, for standing in the gap for when men and women are too weak to stand for themselves and advocate for themselves. And so I thank you all. God bless you. To our viewers, if you're going through domestic violence, if you know someone who's going through domestic violence, don't keep quiet. Educate yourself, get the help. Don't allow love to love you to death. It is not worth it. It's not worth it. Love is about life, not death. And so
Absolutely.
I thank you for tuning in. Next week, actually next Saturday on February 13th, and looking forward, the platform's having a hybrid Valentine's Day event. It's going to be blessed. It's going to be exciting. There's going to be food and fellowship. So you can join us online, or in the sanctuary. If you're coming in the sanctuary, we are limited to how many people we can have because of COVID restrictions, but online is unlimited. You are in for a treat, and we will be back online the following Monday, the 15th of February at 7:30. And so I thank you again for joining us, your support for the platform, for our guests. Be blessed to be a blessing. Have a good evening.
Thank you.